Great, it's on. Brilliant. So let's get started. So before I start sharing my slides, I just want to say hello. I will be running today's session together with my three colleagues. And my name is Amanda, and I work for Renaisi, and we're the evaluation and learning partner for the Together Fund. And I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves so you know who will be leading the session today. So I'll hand it over to you, Joyce.
Thanks, Amanda, and nice to see everyone. I'm Joyce, supporting Amanda for these capacity building sessions. Really great to see you guys. Laura, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Morning, everyone. Nice to see everyone on the call. So I'm Laura. I'm also supporting on this project. John, do you want to go?
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm John. Sorry, my camera isn't on. Whenever I turn it on, it has me doing some funky little dance. I'm not really sure what's going on there, so I'm just going to leave it off for now. Also supporting on this project.
Brilliant. Thanks you three. Let me check. I'm just gonna so it seems like some people are still coming in, but we will get started. And yeah, thanks so much for sharing your reasons for being here today and your name and organization. That's really helpful. Let's see if you can see that. Can you see those slides now?
Perfect.
Brilliant. Let's see if I have the right things up. So great. Thanks so much for joining us today for the very first capacity building session that we'll be doing now in the next few months. So kind of what with the question now that I asked you to answer, what are you hoping to learn today? We will review this after the session and see if there's anything that we haven't covered today that we can cover in another session going forward. And we at Renaisi, most of you have engaged with us through open calls or Teams or in other ways. And just to give an overview, we're a social enterprise with a focus on making deep and lasting changes in places across the UK. And we offer many types of support to individuals, organizations, and whole systems. And as I said earlier, we're the evaluation and learning partner for the Together Fund. And we're also providing this capacity building support offer around monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So this is the very first session of our series of support. So in terms of what we're going to do today, we're going to have a little introduction from Jess from Sport England about the kind of approach, the MEL approach of Sport England, and then we're going to give you an overview of what is monitoring and evaluation and learning. And I will be saying MEL. I think most of us will, because it's a bit of a mouthful to say the full sentence. And we'll be having some breakout rooms, and then we're going to talk about like collecting data and also organizational buy-in. And then we're going to have another breakout session, and then have a Q&A, and then we're going to wrap up. So it's going to be all in all 1.5 hours. So we're going to finish at 11:30 is the plan. Great. So actually, I will already now hand over to Jess if you're on the call. There's lots of different boxes. I can't actually see.
I'm here.
Oh, brilliant.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jess. I'm part of the evaluation and learning team here at Sport England. And it's great to see so many faces, some that I know and some that I don't know, which is great. And more of the Together Fund family all together. I'm really looking forward to today's session. The first one was Renaisi, so it should be good. Just like to set a little bit of context, I guess, to the evaluation of the Together Fund, and then also, I guess, a bit of how within Sport England we're kind of changing our approach to evaluation and learning. Some of you might have seen kind of in 2022, at the end of last year, we launched our kind of new evaluation and learning approach, and that was kind of offset by uniting the movement, and we wanted to make sure that our evaluation and learning approaches, kind of responding to the complexities of Unite the Movement and the ambitions of that. And through that, we realised that we needed to kind of align it to the approach. We needed to embed our evaluation and learning offer, make sure that it was kind of reflective of partners and communities and it suited their context, but also that we were helping to kind of build capacity and capability towards evaluation within our partners. So hopefully, you know, having this kind of capacity building session today, we'll start to do that and kind of fits in really nicely with that. And I think it's really important that we need to make sure that our evaluation approaches are suited to local contexts, the needs of our partners, yourselves, but also we have to balance that with the kind of desire for a little bit of consistency across the organisation, which is a challenge, which hopefully we'll get there one point and we're working towards. I think for Together Fund, you know, this is a new way of working, this evolved way of funding is really important, and through our evaluation and learning we really want to make sure that we're able to capture, you know, how this works, the benefits of that, so we're able to advocate for that as a way of working moving forward, and also just to demonstrate its effectiveness, or maybe what can be improved moving forward. Also, the way of the Together Fund that's worked, we're working with some new partners, so we want to make sure that we're able to really kind of get the benefits of that, what works for new partners and what support our partners might want. Yeah, as well as making sure that we're also reaching those groups through tackling inequalities, making sure we are kind of working with those communities and areas that need it the most. And that's it from myself. I guess I'll pass back to Joyce.
Thank you, Jess. Great. So Amanda, I think we're ready to kick off then.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Right, so as I said earlier, we will be referring monitoring and evaluation and learning. We will be saying MEL. I guess it's a bit easier. So what is monitoring, evaluation and learning, MEL? So monitoring is kind of the routine data collection to measure progress, and that could be kind of how many young people attended activity X and how often do you run session Y. And then evaluation is assessment of outputs, outcomes and unintended effects, and this could be for some understanding the experience and value of a certain activity or project or a program, and understanding what people actually get from attending an activity. And then learning is to basically bringing all of that learning from the monitoring and evaluation stage together to improve future implementation of that project or program or activity. And it could also be about kind of digging deeper into something that you've learned through this, doing all this research that you've done. So what do we actually want to do, Mel? And yeah, so the first thing is understanding what is the value of your program. What do people actually gain from it? And is this really valuable to know that kind of going forward? Because that means you know what people gain from it, and also what people might be missing. You can use that learning to improve what you're doing, making it more efficient and valuable for the people you work with. And then when you know what you do and what you do well, you can share that with others. You can also learn from them, and you have a bit more kind of a clear story to tell others as well. And of course, inevitably, knowing what you do well and how you do it is really helpful when you apply for funding, so you can actually prove you know, what you do well and what you're intending to do and what people actually gain from it. And then also that learning that you get through your programs can bring out some really, really interesting things that can be used to influence sector-wide policies as well. And in terms of like how to do MEL, and there's lots of different ways to do it, but we have this little circle here, and I guess that's really to show that MEL is a process. So it's like kind of starting off with like understanding the needs and the context and what are you actually doing, and then kind of building your theory of change and identifying the outcomes, the indicators, and then you go into the data collection, and then you do the data analysis, and then you bring all of that together and share learning, and then you use that to improve and adapt whatever you're doing. So we're going to go through the kind of different key elements for sound MEL practices, and the first one being selecting what you're trying to measure, 2, collecting good data, and then 3, systematic learning and improvement. So for the first one, I will be handing over to my colleague John.
Great, thanks Amanda. Okay, move on to the slide. Great. So yes, I'm going to be talking about what you're going to be measuring. So this process starts by asking a few important questions. First one being, why do you want to collect the data? Which links back to Amanda's point about why to do MEL. So around understanding your impact, improving your delivery, learning from what you're doing, that kind of. Next, you want to identify the types of data that you can feasibly collect. So can you do surveys, interviews, case studies? What kind of data can you feasibly collect? Then you want to identify how feasibly you can collect the data and who will be involved in measurement. So identifying specific roles and responsibilities to be involved in the data collection. And also considering how the data will be used. And it links back to the why. Will it be for external reporting? Will it be for internal learning processes? And making sure that your data is fit for purpose for those purposes. Next slide. So one of the key tools for helping answer some of these questions is a theory of change. And a theory of change maps out how a particular initiative or intervention leads to change and why. As you can see, there are several different basic elements to a theory of change. So on the left, you have your inputs or stakeholders, so who or what will be involved in this intervention. Next, you have your activities, so what is done during the course of the intervention. Then on the right, you've got your outcomes, which is in terms of what's achieved, and then your impact, which is the broader goal that you're looking to feed into. And connecting the two are the mechanisms of change. So how do the activities that you do lead to the outcomes that you would like to achieve? This is a very basic theory of change structure, and there's lots of variation, as we'll see with some of the later examples. Go to the next slide. But first, I can understand why people would ask why they need a theory of change, because it can sound quite academic or a complicated process. But I think a theory of change is really important for helping you to, as I said, identify how change will happen in different contexts. It involves asking the important questions that help you align priorities towards your goals. It helps in identifying the roles and activities that contribute to which changes. Helps in terms of agreeing what to do to make the changes happen. And importantly, a theory of change helps you test and adapt the different ideas when contexts change, as you learn more about what works and what doesn't work in different contexts. And importantly, it's a live process that's never complete. So you can go back and edit your theory of change as you learn more and priorities shift. So as mentioned before, there's lots of different variation in a theory of change. I realise there's quite a lot of writing on the slides. We will be sharing the slides afterwards. But for this one, for UPress, so on the left, we can see the activities, the mechanisms, the outcomes, and then the aim at the bottom, which is that broader impact, like the why, the change that you'd like to see. If we go to the next example. So here we've got an empowering places theory of change. So as you can see, this one's circular rather than more linear. And starting in the middle, you've got like concentric circles of the different outcomes, and those outcomes that feed into the broader impact around the edge. So these are just to show you that a theory of change can take many different forms and be presented in different ways. So you've got your theory of change, you've mapped out the impact that you'd like to have and the steps that you need to get there. And now you want to consider which data you're going to collect, or what data you're going to collect to help you to test your theory of change. And an evaluation framework helps you to do this. So an evaluation framework is basically like a plan or a map of MEL activities for a specific program, intervention, or organization. And again, there are some key questions to ask. So again, what are you trying to test? So what data are you looking to collect to answer which questions? What would success look like in the intervention? So again, the outcomes that you'd like to see. How will you measure these outcomes? So what data will you collect, and who will be responsible for collecting this data? When will the data be collected? Like how often and at what times we collect the data? And then linking back to that first question before, like how will, as I mentioned before, like how the data will be used. So does the data that you're looking to collect, is it appropriate for the purposes behind the data collection? So here we've got an example evaluation framework. So again, with those questions, so what are you trying to learn or test? The question you're trying to answer, the outcome you're hoping to achieve, the data collection methods, so surveys, interviews, that kind of thing. Who will be responsible for collecting the data, the points at which the data will be collected, and then lastly, the outputs the data will factor into, so making sure that the data is fit for those outputs. So to help bring some of these concepts to life, we've invented a charity called Spox Sports, and Spox Sports is here to help everyone live long and prosper by combining a love of science fiction with physical activity. And at the bottom of the screen, you can see Spox Sports' theory of change. So the inputs of the stakeholders, these are their key beneficiaries in this case, who are active science fiction fans. Then the activities that Spox Sports delivers, their physical group activities. Then the outcomes that are looking to see are improved mental and physical health, mental health for their beneficiaries. And it's contributing to that broader impact of a happier and healthier society. And in terms of what connects the activities with the outcomes and the impact, their key mechanisms of change are a science fiction theme and a welcoming environment, so that everyone feels welcome in their physical group activities. So Spox Sports have got their theory of change. Now they've mapped out their evaluation framework. As you can see, they've got the questions on the left that they're looking to test with this data. So the first one is whether or not activities improve mental well-being. The success would be participants reporting improved mental health as a result of taking part. They're going to measure this with pre and post surveys using the ONS4 wellbeing indicators. These are a series of indicators that are used to assess mental well-being. The activity leaders and session volunteers will be responsible for distributing the surveys with the ONS4 indicators on them, collected at the beginning of sessions on a quarterly basis, so they can identify change over time. And they're collecting this data to feed into their annual reports for their funder. And we've got another example, just there on the bottom row, sorry. We've done something similar for like learning what works to reach or promote sports activities to science fiction fans. So different data collection methods to test these different questions. Right. So now we're going to have a breakout discussion. My colleague Laura will be assigning people into breakout rooms. And in small groups of 4 or 5, it'd be great if you can discuss what MEL looks like in your organization and what's going well. I was about to say what's going well with MEL, which sounds a bit clunky, but what's going well so far and what is proving a bit more challenging with your MEL processes.
Thanks so much, John. Laura, before you put us into breakout rooms, I just want to ask if there was any kind of immediate questions on what we presented so far before we go into the rooms. No? All right, then Laura can put us into breakout rooms.
Sorry, it might just take a minute to assign everyone.
That's fine. I will stop sharing, and I can we can share the. Actually, Joyce, would you be able to kind of pop the questions in the chat so people have them? Because not all of the rooms will have one of us from Renaisi, because we're quite a lot of us, and yeah, there's going to be smaller groups than that. But I will be floating around to the different groups and check in. So we have about, I think, like 15 minutes for this session. Yes, great. Everyone's back. Thanks for that. Yeah, I was floating around a little bit in the different rooms, and it seems like there was lots of really good discussions going on. We will have another breakout session, so if there's anything that you feel that you want to continue speaking about, you can use that time as well. But before we move on to the next part of the presentation, I just want to throw the questions out there. If there's anything specific that you learned from each other in this session, anything that stood out to you that you would like to share? Conscious is a very big group. Oh yeah, Natalie, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for us, we kind of finished on the end of it with it really, but around moving into, especially MEL being part of our culture. I think that's something for me that actually I was like, yeah, when without knowing, I think we've started to move into that, but actually doing that a whole lot more, it being that culture of feedback and learning, and it being built into our planning and everything we do. I think that's come across as quite key to me.
Does that resonate with other groups? That is something we will actually be talking through now in the next session, kind of on this organizational buy-in and the culture. Anyone else would like to share any learnings from this breakout sessions?
I can. I'm just trying to see how to raise my hand, and I can't find it. Oh, there it is. It's too late now. I've just shouted anyway. So
that's great.
I think one thing we were talking about, which is probably everyone, this is common sense to everyone, but one size doesn't fit all. We were talking about the Together Fund, which won the Sport England, but most of you probably know about the Together Fund. Requirements coming from the funder of what they want, and we think, oh well, that's easy. We'll set up a survey, an online survey for that. But you need to consider who the audience is, who the actual participants are, or the organisers are, and how easy is that for them, what mechanism is going to work for them. Because a Survey Monkey is great for us, it collects the data automatically, but when the organiser has 50 sort of 10, 11-year-olds, they're dealing with them, it's not so easy for them to manage that. So it's really kind of understanding that beforehand, before we roll out the actual process. So as I say, it's probably common sense, but that's one of the things we talked about.
Thanks for sharing that. Any final thoughts on it from anyone else?
In our group, in our breakout room, we talked about both questions actually, and building a evaluation framework or theory of change at the start is really helpful, and most organizations are doing that, but there might be, when you're doing lots of evaluation and going from one project to another project, there sometimes could be a reflection time, lack of reflection time due to capacity. But also, you know, most of us are doing monitoring, evaluation, and learning. But then, so what question came up? What's that? You know, so what? You're doing getting X number of people outputs. So there, we talked about kind of having both quantitative and qualitative element and showing impact. And for example, with case studies about how is it impacting an individual participating in the project, and also Mel being part of the culture, but also learning from if something didn't go so well, learning from it and developing that culture of openness and transparency, that everyone feels that it didn't work. Okay, we learned something from it, so next time, it would be we would do it differently, for example. But one of the challenges that how to keep the relationship going with ex-grantees or past grantees for Sport England, organisations that have given grants, not Together Fund, but before. And it sometimes comes down to capacity. How do we, continue keep on kind of to avoid transactional approach? How do we keep them engaged and have them on board? So there were kind of discussions that all of us are doing, Mel, and in different ways. So it's about, I think, how do we kind of keep the momentum going and learning from it and improvement. And so I think there are different ways, quantitative and qualitative, that needs to be kind of balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And I just want to kind of comment on what you said as well, like learning from mistakes and when things have not gone that well. And it's something that we've been kind of discussing a little bit at Renaisi, of potentially organising some kind of failure session, which might sound pretty negative, but it's actually incredibly useful because, you know, also for us as a research organization, we've obviously had projects that might have not gone in the way that we wanted to, and like we've kind of adapted things and we've learned so much in the process. So yeah, that's something we will come back to in this capacity building support. Yeah, Helen, and that will be the last one before we move on.
Yeah, it was just to add in kind of the importance around it. So I'm talking from kind of a I managed to Get Active program. So we have 3 funders. We've got Spirit of 2012, LMCT and Sport England. So it's kind of looking at monitoring, evaluation and learning across the 3 funders as well, and making sure we get the balance right of what we're asking. I think we've been on a journey since 2016 with it through GOGA, and we've certainly kind of learned a lot around it. And it's the importance of monitoring and evaluation kind of thought from the very start of the programme, rather than kind of thinking about it towards the end of the programme. So, you know, with our partners and with our GOGA network, and we were asking about sustainability, legacy, monitoring, evaluation from kind of day dot, rather than kind of waiting for a couple of years into the project to start looking at monitoring and evaluation. And I think what we've certainly learned is there's lots and lots of different ways to do it as well. And, you know, we've certainly learned a lot through our registration forms, but also kind of gathering that the softer kind of data around it as well. So it's not always about bums on seats, it's kind of the journey of those individuals and the impact that's had over kind of that period of time. So we've certainly learned a lot of different methods through GOGA, working with our partners to kind of the best way to capture that impact of those participants and workforce as well. And you know, again, we've not got it fully right, but we're constantly learning. And because we've got such a network of localities, there's 35 localities that have been involved, we're very open with our network and kind of, you know, ask them to tell us what doesn't work. So, you know, they think we always want to know what is working. Yes, we do, that's brilliant, but we're constantly going back to them saying, you know, what didn't work, why didn't that work, and what's the learning from that. So we have a whole learning log of, you know, not just from us as Activity Alliance kind of leading on the programme, but from all our partners as well. So I think it's changing that kind of attitude with partners as well, that not to be scared to say what's not worked, because you actually learn more from what's not worked to kind of what is working.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that, Helen. I will be sharing my screen again because we're going to move on to the next part of the presentation. So let me just do that. And then I'll be handing over to Laura.
Great, thanks, Amanda. So yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about collecting data. So in terms of the types of data, so there's obviously 2 main types of data that we can collect. So for the qualitative data, it's more questions around like the why and the how of things, and looking at like words and meanings, you know, themes and experiences generally. And some ways we can do that is through like interviews, focus groups, observation, ethnography. It could be also like photos or a wide variety of things. And then there's quantitative methods, which is more about like the kind of what or how many of something. So looking at numbers and statistics, which can be presented as like percentages and graphs. And ways you could do that is through like monitoring. So like obviously taking attendance data, like survey questions, pre and post involvement measures. And a good way of remembering the difference that I learned recently was, so qual ends in L, which is about letters, quant ends in is about N, so it's numbers, which I thought was quite a fun way to remember. So yeah, could you go to the next one, Amanda? So in terms of collecting good data, so it's some of the opportunities that you have around doing that. So making sure that you're collecting the data at the right time. So we talked a lot about like starting early, and also like, you know, making sure you collect data throughout, and collecting quant and qual data in ways that kind of complement each other. So potentially that could be like, you know, if you see a dip in attendance data, a dip in attendance, maybe like digging into that through interviews or something like that, and triangulating data sources. So, you know, not just speaking to participants, but also speaking to like people delivering the program and seeing the similarities and differences and why that might be. And then also, so kind of embedding data collection methods into the program. So maybe that could be like giving you 5 minutes at the end for feedback every week, or you know, kind of building that in and also kind of recognizing the limitations of the data being collected, and like kind of acknowledging that when presenting the data, not presenting it as like just kind of fact, but you know, understanding the limitations, and kind of comparing results to similar interventions as well. So, you know, seeing what might be different, what might be similar, and kind of digging a bit more into the reasons why that might be, can be really helpful. And some of the challenges, we've already spoken a bit about this in the breakout groups, but so kind of collecting credible outcomes data can be challenging. It can be like difficult to attribute changes to one specific intervention, but obviously people's lives are very complicated and there could be multiple factors at play. And it can be difficult just practically, you know, getting lots of responses to surveys or getting good kind of interview data, that kind of thing. And then funders requiring data that's not kind of actionable or responsible. So maybe funders are asking for something which isn't like practical to collect, or might be, you might not feel it's, you know, okay to ask the participants that kind of thing, or them taking the data and like using it out of context. So those are some of the kind of challenges around data collection. So hand back over to, is it Joyce?
Thank you, Laura. Great, so I'm gonna just walk through a bit on the organizational kind of MEL buy-in and how we can embed systematic learning and improvement. So I think just already coming out from this conversation, it's been really helpful to just kind of go through with you the importance of being intentional with MEL. I think everyone is thinking about that. How do you tailor that? How do you make sure that data collection is very focused on answering key questions? But I guess something that's coming up from the reflection so far is that to really use data meaningfully actually requires a lot of organizational wide buy-in. And so this means, for example, processes and mechanisms to capture and harvest information across the organization. So from kind of project level to kind of reporting and kind of learning level. You also kind of need resources to do MEL, and also Helen, you were mentioning, you know, that organizational culture to embrace learnings and think about, you know, embrace things that didn't work and think openly about how you learn and adapt programs or strategy around it. So before we kind of go into how we could do that, I guess it would be good to kind of have a chat about what organization-wide kind of that learning culture and mindset, what this could look like. So I think some key things for us is making sure that the organization kind of values and mainstreams reflection and learning. And so this could look like, for example, taking a very evidence and learning-based approach in decision-making. So actively collecting data and reflecting on it to make decisions around the organizational strategy or programs and activities. The next bit is kind of perceiving MEL as everyone's responsibility and the benefits of MEL feeding into everyone's roles. And the third bit is more about kind of, again, valuing that open discussion on progress and challenges as they emerge from the data. So in terms of how to really embed an organizational learning approach, it's kind of taking on innovation for poverty action. They've kind of conceptualized organizational culture as kind of a behavioral change challenge. And so in terms of how we address it, we could address it across kind of three main themes. So there's capability on the left in orange, there's opportunity, and there's also motivation. So capability is really about thinking about giving people the skills, the confidence to use MEL, interpret MEL, and kind of take that data and apply that meaningfully in their work. And so a lot of this could be addressed with like training and kind of tailored to the starting point of different people that are engaging with MEL, and having a think about how to interpret data and how do you kind of spot biases in how you interpret information as well. Motivation is more about putting in place the organizational mechanisms and structures that support people to use MEL meaningfully and in a way that actually kind of like cultivates individuals' own reflective tendencies, and putting that into action. And then the third bit is opportunity. So that key resource, budget, time, people to do MEL, kind of capacity issues, but also having the social opportunity, which could include things like the underpinning values and social norms of the organization that really encourages and normalizes reflection and learning. And so the argument is that when we target those three things, it will then lead to behavior change at an organizational level that then values and normalizes reflection and learning from data. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the next slide, it's a bit much in terms of words, but this is more of a resource to help you think about what are the challenges around these three capability, opportunity, motivations, identifying what challenges tend to come up, but also what are the opportunities to address it. So as discussed with kind of capability, a lot of this could be, the challenges could be about lack of familiarity or understanding of how to do MEL and how to kind of action on MEL data. And so the opportunities there would be kind of that training, but also kind of, I think people have also mentioned involving non-MEL kind of staff into the process and helping them think through how to tailor some research tools. How do we make it context or audience appropriate and provide kind of extra, and kind of by involving non-MEL staff as well, that could provide extra context for data analysis in the future. Opportunity-wise, a lot of the challenges there, again, capacity and resources, or when organizations value kind of making things look good rather than thinking about what hasn't worked well and learning from that. And so a lot of the opportunity to address those challenges, a lot of it definitely has to start with leadership and creating that value and mindset to kind of embed learning and reflection in the day-to-day. But in terms of what we could do, if not necessarily at leadership level, there are, it's again really important to have that data planning or the MEL planning stage. So I think people are mentioning thinking about MEL from the very start and thinking about how, what are the key questions we want to answer with this information, and collecting information in that way and identifying how you will use that data. Is that for internal learning? Who will be the audience for that? Who would it be meaningful for? Or if it's for external audiences, what could that look like, etc. And then another part that we could think about is also developing a strong exemplar for the processes of MEL and showcasing that the benefits of it to the wider organization. In terms of motivation, some of the challenges, I think, is, the tendency to just gravitate towards successes and what's working well rather than embracing things that don't work, or challenged in terms of seeing how MEL could apply to individual roles. And so the opportunity there is really to think about how we can make things, or how do we kind of build in processes that support individual reflection and learning and acting on kind of things that you've learned. And so this could be around kind of individual performance reviews, or kind of framing project goals around solving problems rather than finding the right way to do things. Great. So the next bit is, again, a breakout room discussion, but kind of focused on the case study that John has introduced around Spock Sports charity. So Spock Sports is struggling with its organizational learning culture. 3 key things. First is colleagues don't understand the MEL processes, and there's a bit of confusion about why it's important. time. So colleagues might not have the time to engage in MEL processes. And the third bit is a lot of data is collected but not actually utilized. So in the breakout rooms, I think we'll have about 10 minutes. There's kind of two key questions that we'd want to ask. So what advice would you give to Spock Sports to help improve its learning culture? And how can Spock Sports get buy-in from across the organization? So we'll post the questions alongside, I think Amanda has already posted the case study slide as well. But yeah, it would be great to kind of break in to breakout rooms for 10 minutes, have a chat, and then we can come back and share again.
Cool, I'll just open the rooms now.
Thank you, Laura.
Room 13 again.
For people to have this learning process in a consistent way, building learning culture. And also stakeholder buy-in, it needs to be, the leadership needs to have time, but we also talked about it's not just learning or reflections from project level, it's also individual, and one-to-ones, building that learning and reflection on individual kind of performance level as well, but also team level, as a team, what worked well, what didn't work well. So not just as project level, but also as an organizational level, as an organization, what are our kind of the work that we're doing, the way we're doing is aligning with the strategic objectives, and how do we make it, how can we improve a way of working to align with their strategic objectives? Also, I think, it's the consistency, leadership, building systems in place and processes. I've made notes on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Natalie and then Hannah.
We talked a little bit about the how and the advice you give, and I think what we focused on, and I think kind of where as an organisation when we're living this at the moment is actually how you build it into your culture. It's a tricky one, and it's almost like the second one of your questions that was the answer to your first one. To me, what advice would you give? The advice is you need to get buy-in. So then we spoke a bit about how you would do that and talked about examples and sharing of when using MEL in the right way, the difference that it can make to projects, that actually you might think you've not got time, but actually it's a time saver in the future, and it's just flipping and kind of flipping that round a little bit and using those tactics to try and get that buy-in. But actually how you use the process of doing MEL properly to help in terms of your wider culture, and having it's using it to develop the healthy culture, within the organisation, using that. Some people like the numbers, some people like the stories, and presenting it multidimensional in that way. But we focus quite a lot of our time on then talking about examples and using the key examples on how in order to gain the buy-in, really.
Thank you. Hannah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think when people aren't using something, it's generally because it's like a fear of the unknown. And I think a lot, like colleagues that I've got, are quite scared of data almost. So it's a lot of these people haven't actually used a graph maybe since secondary school in their GCSEs or something like that. So from that angle, it is an overwhelming task. And if people aren't understanding something or they're scared of it, they're not really going to engage with it. So it's kind of how can I, as an insight officer, like upskill my colleagues and make data less scary, and what stories can you extract from data, what could it mean, and going along that storytelling route a little bit, and because we've grown up with stories and that's what we're comfortable with. So yeah, it's kind of just how to make it more relatable almost, and then before going into data sets and platforms that you can use to find it, just getting people comfortable with what the data is telling us, or what it could be suggesting, and then where the gaps are, what don't we know, and then how we can find that out together. So yeah, I think that's the angle that I'm going to try and go from with my colleagues.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I think, as you say, like, stories are absolutely key in all of this. I see Natalie holding up your hand. Paul, did you still want to say something, or I think you're holding up?
No, I was. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
All right. Okay, then Natalie.
Sorry, mine was up from before. I forgot to lower it. Sorry.
All right. Okay. No worries at all. Is anyone else want to share anything or ask anything? Okay. Well, then I'm just going to share my slides again. Let me just get them up again. Go. So yes, I'm just going to move on from this one now. Great. So yeah, we're coming to the end of this session, and first of all, I just really want to say massive thanks for engaging so well in it. It's been so nice to see so many people here as well today. As I said, thank you so much for taking the time. So the next steps, so we're going to be sharing this recording, and we're also going to be sharing the slides and also some other materials as well. So for example, like an example framework for Mel. We can also share some more theory change examples as well, if that's helpful. And then what's coming up next? So in May, we're going to have a deep dive into quantum call data collection methods. We're going to go into a bit more like different types of methods that we could use. They're not only these kind of traditional ones as like surveys or interviews. It could also be like using creative methods. And Laura mentioned earlier, you can also use like photos and things like that. So we'll be going into that, and as well as also discussing a bit more about how we can make these methods as equitable and inclusive as possible. And then we just want to kind of say as well that we're around on Teams. So whenever you have a question about anything, we're there for you. So please use that tool to reach us. And then within this theme, so like the kind of overview of Mel, we're also going to have troubleshoot sessions. And just to kind of explain what I mean by that, this is basically a 2-hour session where it's going to be an opportunity to have your kind of questions and answered in real time. And this will very much be a sharing opportunity. So we are basically looking for any challenges or anything like that you may have. So we'll be sending out a form. And it would be great if you have any specific challenge in your organization or anything that you're kind of wondering about that you would like to kind of unpick in that session, please do reach out. So we will kind of, depending on how many people respond, we might be having kind of 15 minutes for each issue when we'll be unpicking that. So it'll be very much a very interactive session. And we're going to be do 2 of those. So the first one will be on the 12th of April and the second one on the 27th of April. And then I think there should be a link in the chat to the form. So please check that out. Great. I think that was it. And you might have another session that on the 24th of April, but that's actually a repetition of this one. So that will be for those who couldn't attend today. And going forward, we will only be running 1 of these sessions for each theme. So we just did 2 now for this first round. Great. So yeah, thank you so much. And before we log off, we would like to collect some feedback on this session, and please be as honest as possible. And yeah, there's a bunch of questions I think also will be shared in the chat, but I will stop sharing my screen. It'll be easier to see stuff.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm happy to share my screen for the Menti feedback. So if you can go to menti.com, I'll share the relevant links in the chat.
Sorry, John, what did you want me? Did you want me to do something?
No, don't worry. I'll share my screen. Sorry.
Okay.
So if you go to menti.com and enter that code, you should be able to answer the questions that we've got here. If
are you able to share your screen?
My screen, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Share screen. There we go. Great. Can everybody access? Fantastic. Yes, we've got some answers coming in. So 4 agreement statements, first of all, first around understanding what MEL is and why it's important, understanding the different stages and tools involved, understanding the different kinds of data to collect, and how best to support learning cultures in different organisations. Well, in your own organisations, but obviously there's lots of different organisations on the call. And as Amanda said, please be honest. This feedback really will help us deliver the sessions going forward. Just give another 20 seconds or so for everyone to answer that one. Any questions or issues accessing Menti, please do shout and put a question in the chat. Great. So the slides seem to be not be moving, so I'll take that as I'll assume that means everyone's been able to get on. So for the next question, oops. What works well with this session? So you should be able to add qualitative answers. So just type in your thoughts and add them there.
There, so it says you don't have permission. I'm not sure what has happened there. John, can you see anything about anyone trying to get in that can't get in to the Mentimeter? And you getting that too, Andreas? Okay. Is that for the?
I see. Yes, no, that's for the Teams form. Apologies.
Right. Okay. We will share that in an email later, so you can just ignore that for now, and we will make sure that that's the right link. And if, obviously, that seems that something's wrong with it, so just we can focus on the Mentimeter now, and then we will collect all the information about the next sessions and all of that in an email that will be sent out later this week.
Right. See some answers coming in. Now, in theory, if I hit next, they should start to appear on the screen. Ah, great. Here we go. More answers coming in. Leave a little more time for this one. As you can see in real time, we are using the different kinds of data, qual and quant, that Laura was talking about earlier, and the theme of our next session as well. Just allow another minute or so for the answer to come in. Right. Just another 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, Andrea, you're saying you're not seeing the next slide. Do you mean like on this Zoom call or on Menti?
On Menti, I had the first two, but it just, yeah, for some reason it keeps asking me to refresh the page, and when I do, nothing's happening. It just says, please wait for the presenter to show the next slide.
Oh, I see. Sorry, yes, that might be because I haven't clicked through just yet.
Then,
once you've submitted your answer.
No, I've only answered two.
That's all right. There's only
yeah,
one covered.
it's okay. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the last question, sorry, what could we improve about this session? So please do share this feedback. It's really important for us to hear. Oops. Helpful to hear more. Renaisi is an expert in the field.
Yeah, this is really helpful for us because it's both that we could kind of share specific examples afterwards and anything that we could share on Teams as well, but also when we kind of frame our next sessions coming up. So it's extremely valuable for us. Thank you.
just allow another minute or so for the answers to come in. Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Just stop sharing my screen.
Yes, thank you so much for joining today. We're going to get 1 minute back. It's 11:29, and yeah, we hope to see you in the next troubleshoot sessions. And we'll be sharing more information via email. So thank you so much, and hope you all have lovely days.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Right.